This is the end user training webinar for the FLIR Duo Pro R. This is our newest product within the SUAS line, and this webinar should basically get you up to speed with the capabilities and the specs of this new camera and help you in the process of determining which thermal imaging camera is right for you and your applications. So let's talk about some of the major selling points for the Duo Pro R. First, it's a dual EOIR sensor, so you're looking at 12 megapixel RGB camera on the left-hand side of this image, and then we have a Tau2 thermal imaging camera on the right-hand side, and that's in both 336 and 640 resolution options. It's a similar product to the Duo that was announced earlier this year, but it needs to be emphasized that this is the high-performance and easy to integrate version of that. The Duo is low resolution, this is high resolution, but they do both offer this EOIR sensor capability, so that's why the Duo and Duo Pro have similarities in name, but they're very, very different in capability. This is a product that was designed for drone use, and some of the work that's done with the thermal imager is to be optimized for drone use, to be for images shot from the sky, but it's likely to find its way into other solutions. It is drone agnostic, so any airframe that can carry the weight and power it is likely to be integrated. We've decided to limit the production of this product only to radiometric units. This was done to emphasize that the Duo Pro R is a premium product and has premium performance. There have been some questions in the past about what capabilities or maybe some confusion about whether a camera can measure temperature of every pixel, which is what radiometry does, and so we just decided to make that blanket across all the versions of this camera. So you'll only see radiometric, they all have R at the end of them. The camera is able to provide a single camera imagery, picture-in-picture, and then the blended imagery using the MSX technology. And that MSX technology provides greater image detail, and we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. The Duo Pro R also has a built-in IMU and GPS for georeferencing and geotagging images for better stitching performance, and this will be used generally for mapping applications. And then lastly, the Duo Pro R is manufactured in Europe, which allows for 30 Hertz exportation under de minimis rules. So there is still paperwork that is required to do the exportation of this product, but it will mean that we are able to open up 30 Hertz units into a larger number of markets and achieve faster shipments. When you're talking about military applications, these are still going to be suspect to greater scrutiny due to global trade compliance. And then also, like I said, licenses will be required on a case-by-case basis. But with that being said, there are no 9 Hertz versions of this camera. They're all 30 Hertz. But because it's not manufactured in the US, it's under European Union global trade compliance or export regulations. And so it is handled differently than the products that we currently have under the UAS space. They will ship from Sweden, generally to the country that they'll be sold into. Outside of, there's some differences with the US because the US is used to using these products. So once these cameras enter into the US, if they are then shipped internationally from the US, then they do have to comply to US export restrictions. So just keep that in mind, that these are a bit different. You aren't going to be using a 9 Hertz, and if you're in China or if you're in Eastern Europe or somewhere where 9 Hertz units are the norm, you can use the 30 Hertz units there, but there are still some trade compliance laws. So I hope that that's covered, because that is a big change to this camera over previous cameras, and I just want to make sure that I drove that home. So I want to highlight what MSX does. MSX is a proprietary and patented technology from FLIR, and it basically takes the edges of the RGB image and overlays it over the thermal image. So basically, when you're there's identifying marks that don't have their own thermal signature, this will allow that data to be processed into a single image so that you're not missing anything. And although I don't have any aerial assets that I can show yet, here's an example of what MSX looks like. So you're looking at a vending machine on the left, and maybe you wouldn't even be able to tell from that thermal image alone that it is a vending machine. But when you add the MSX, like the image on the right, you're able to see that there's pretzels inside the vending machine, as well as red vines, and you can see the numbers and the labels. You could also see the change in currencies that it accepts on the right-hand side. So this is data that would be missing from a thermal image by itself while you're flying these missions with a drone, rather than getting thermal and then having to land, change a camera, and go fly back out with a visible camera. You have both on board, and you're also able to get this really crucial data all from single images using MSX. So hopefully that all makes sense. In the industrial space, you'd likely use this for seeing serial numbers or pull numbers or power line inspections. You would be able to use it for license plate numbers or for addresses on houses for public safety things. So that extra data is just, first of all, it's saving you battery time or flight time or taking the drone back to change cameras, but it's also giving you single images that have all the data captured in one. Let's go on to this. So let's talk about what's on board. So on these cameras, on the Duo Pro R, the thermal imager, again, is a Tau 2 based. It's either a 640 by 512 or a 336 by 256 resolution camera. Those are one of the few options that you would need to select when choosing these cameras, but it's going to be relatively the same imager that you're getting on the FLIR View, for the FLIR View Pro, or the Zenmuse XT that you might be used to flying. There's also the 12 megapixel camera that's on board, and it also records 4K video. The downlink is going to be in 1080p at its maximum. There's also the IMU, the inertial measurement unit, that's on board, along with the GPS. There's also a number of other sensors, such as temperature and humidity sensors, and currently these are all to be used for georeferencing, but in the future it's possible we can use these sensors to also contribute to higher quality imagery from the or higher accuracy in the radiometric imagery. So these sensors make this camera powerful, and if you look at the size of the camera, a good portion of these are dedicated to those a good portion of the size is dedicated to having these sensors on board to make this an extremely powerful product. The IMU and GPS allow those images to be referenced without using the drone's GPS. It's completely dedicated so that the camera can do all that internally, and so hopefully you see the value in that. Now, as far as integration, with this product, we placed a high level or a high amount of our focus on making it easy to integrate. So the weight of this product is around 325 grams. The 25 millimeter version on the 640 does weigh slightly more, and the size measured in millimeters you can see here, just to get an idea. If you need a CAD drawing or anything like that, shoot me an email and I'll send over the drawing. So if you do want to do some integration work, separate gimbals or something like that, that you can make sure that this camera will work for you. It also offers digital and video output. The digital output is going to come through the 10-pin, I think it's a JST interface cable, and the digital video will come through the HDMI connector. We have both on here so that it just had flexibility, so you would be able to choose a range of downlink options rather than make you or force you into a higher cost digital output or force you into a lower resolution or lower capability analog output. So that's why we did that. The protocol for the Duo Pro R is standardized for MAVLink systems, and there's 3 PWMs to allow for greater control of the camera. This will allow you to change color palettes and manipulate the gimbal, record images, etc. And this protocol basically allows for that full functionality of an aerial thermal imaging system. From the feedback that we received from previous UAS products, we offered a wider range for power output. So you're looking at between 5 and 26 volts for the camera. Okay, and then you can also record thermal and visible images simultaneously on the 2 onboard SD cards that you can see on the camera. And you can also choose when you're looking at the imagery with first-person view between a single image, blended image, or that picture-in-picture. Like other SUAS products, you're also able to access the camera through Bluetooth to make changes, but keep in mind the Bluetooth connectivity is not for video transmission. or for first-person view. So when you're connecting the camera to the Bluetooth, you'll see it on the top that there's a Bluetooth button. This is not like a GoPro Bluetooth where there's an app that you can see what the camera is seeing real time. That is only to change settings and connect to the app to set those settings. Hopefully that's clear. So the additional sensors like the GPS and IMU were intended to serve 2D and 3D aerial mapping missions. Geotagging images, like I said, no longer require you to tap into the airframe and can be done accurately and independently. So software companies like Pix4D, Drone Deploy, Bentley, Precision Hawk, etc. are making efforts to improve their output of thermal imaging orthomosaics. Stitch maps like this can create a powerful tool for covering large areas and pinpointing anomalies. So here you can look at solar panels, but in large commercial roofing applications or crops, field of crops, you can use the Duo Pro R. It doubles your data output and allows for these radiometric maps to be created. I know that for many mapping missions, some prefer 20 megapixel stills, and we understand that, but 12 is what we were limited to for a number of reasons, but hopefully this will still provide enough data for you to do some of these mapping missions. Yes, vector maps is another that you can choose to use. I apologize for leaving that out. So here's I thought this was an interesting video, but Bentley has context capture, and it's a pretty powerful software platform that can illustrate doing point clouds and 3D modeling for both visible and thermal imaging. The use of this technology will likely expand by the number of users that are doing these sorts of thermal applications. But I just wanted to show you the quality that's being put out and what you can do in the future with this camera. So next, I think that it's important to emphasize, and I did this earlier, that how different the Duo Pro R is than other thermal imaging cameras that you might associate with FLIR. So although it's similar in name, the Duo Pro R is completely different than the Duo, which is the GoPro form factor version that you see in the top, I guess, the top left of the right side. That was announced in January of 2017. The Duo is a 160 by 120 resolution lepton-based camera in a GoPro form factor. It's intended for entry-level uses, but it does provide that dual EOIR capability. So this can be or has been confused of, I've seen what the Duo can do and it was low resolution. The Duo Pro R is very different than that. They do have some similar concepts. They both have MSX, but the Duo Pro R is a much more powerful platform in every way. The Duo Pro R is also a Tau 2-based platform like the View Pro and the ZenMuse XT, but this dual camera, the onboard sensors, and the MSX technology are not presented in the View Pro or the ZenMuse XT. The Duo Pro R is a standalone camera, and it needs to be integrated into airframes, unlike the ZenMuse XT, which is plug and play with the Inspire 1, Matrice 100, Matrice 200 series, and the Matrice 600 series airframes. Just to take the platform to say it, the ZenMuse XT will never be integrated with an Inspire 2. There's no adapter that makes it available to be used on an Inspire 2 or an Osmo, and there's no plans between FLIR and DJI to ever make a thermal imaging camera directly for an Inspire 2 plug and play. I get asked that question probably more than any, and so I feel like this is a good platform to at least lay that out there, that the ZenMuse XT is limited to the Inspire 1 and the Matrice airframes, and that will be it for now and going forward. So when you purchase the Duo Pro R, this is what's included. There's 6 thermal imaging options for the Duo Pro R, so the camera is obviously going to come along with that, and we'll talk about what those options are shortly. It also comes along with integration cables, the GPS antenna for the IMU, and also a USB Type A and Type C cable, and the 2 64 gig SD cards that are on board. We were unable to include an HDMI cable. There was just basically some certification things that need to happen for you to include an HDMI. So if you're planning on using the digital output, the only thing that you'd have to source yourself is that HDMI cable. You may also want to integrate with a stabilizing gimbal system or downlink or a separate power source. Those things would be things you would have to get on your own. This is largely related to our relationship with DJI. We still make these standalone cameras, but they do require integration on your part, and we'll talk a little bit more about integration. So it's important to remember that this product is drone agnostic. It was not made for any specific drone, and the number of drones we've put this on are still relatively low. Depending on the sophistication of integration that you desire, you might want to stabilize the camera with a gimbal. We are unable as FLIR to provide that gimbal directly, so there are third parties that are providing options, and our dealer network will have a better idea of what those options would be to suit your specific needs. If you want to look further into this, please contact me and I'll put you in touch with the right contact. However, a majority of the testing with the Duo Pro R was done with the DJI Matrice 100, so we know that it can work or does work with that airframe. Early units have also been integrated with S1000s and M600s. The Gremsy T1 gimbal, that's what we showed at Interdrone, and that seems to be a very popular option for integrating these cameras. However, companies like Yangda in China started developing a custom gimbal that's trying to get as close to plug and play as possible. I'm sure that there will be more to emerge in the future. The Duo Pro R on a Gremsy gimbal weighs roughly around 200 grams more than the Z30 and the Zenmuse XT. So I would anticipate you'll see the Duo Pro R flown with other DJI airframes as well as other manufacturers, but that integration will depend on whether you can get the ground clearance and get a stabilizing gimbal that works for you. So we'll see this integration process mature over time when the cameras get out to the distribution network. So as mentioned before, there are only 6 variations of the Duo Pro R. Because you only have a single frame rate, just the 30 hertz rather than 30 hertz and 9 hertz, this will also speed up the purchasing process and make it a little easier for you to determine what camera you need and also to take to the geographical regions that you need to. So really, you as an end user only need to decide between the resolution, so 336 by 5 or 256 or 640 by 512. There's no downside to having high resolution cameras in this case. The only downside is that it's going to hit your pocketbook a little more. But as far as industrial applications, 640 in every case is a better option. And then you then need to choose what lens type. So for a smaller lens, meaning the 9mm or the 13mm, respective to the resolution, that's going to be a wider field of view. So you're going to be able to see more at any given time, but you're going to have less specificity and detail within the image. When you get up to the 19mm on the 336 or the hyper narrow field of view for these products, the 25mm on the 640, you're going to have a lot of specific detail, but you're not going to see as much at any given time. So the 25mm or the 640 is going to be generally for industrial inspection applications where it's not really a moving target. You know where it is. You just can't necessarily get too close to it. So that 25mm lens will allow you to get the detail you need without flying too close. So in the choices that you need to make when selecting cameras, resolution is one that commands the largest change in price. With the 640 resolution camera, basically you increase the number of pixels within the image, making it more likely to get the accuracy and detail that you need for your specific application. Like I said, there's no downsides to using a 640 resolution camera other than the cost. So putting a 320, which we could just assume 336, and a 640 camera side by side, you can still see the vehicles, you can still see the buildings and the trees, but if you look, and over webinar, I'm not sure how well this comes through, but if you look at the person standing in the background, they're much blurrier on the left image, and you can't really see that there's any gap between their legs. That just kind of illustrates the detail that you're missing. So this is probably around 50, 75 feet, or let's say 30 meters away, and or say 25 meters away. And if you were looking for this person, and let's say this was a remote area and you were trying to find, a missing person, how difficult would it be if you had a lesser resolution to make out whether it's a person or something else? So you can see here that resolution does matter, but in most instances, or in many instances, a 336 camera would still be adequate. If your mission is critical that you are able to detect something, and that you don't miss it, like a search and rescue mission. 640 camera is highly preferred. For firefighting, or something like that, maybe 336 is fine. And we could go into more application stuff either via email or in the question and answer session if you'd like. For lenses, this just gives you an idea of comparing field of view between 9mm to 19mm. You can see on the 9mm lens that a smaller subject would be more difficult to identify. You could clearly see the person walking there, but you're not able to make out a lot of specific details. And if you were even flying higher than this, that person would be even smaller. But you're able to cover a larger area of ground at any given time. So here you could see the car on the left, you could see more of the field on the right. So if you did not know that this person was there and you were looking for them in a search and rescue mission, you're able to see more space at a given time using this wider field of view. Now, if you jump over to the 19mm lens, it's more like looking through a soda straw. You're able to see a lot of detail of the person, and the likelihood of you finding that person would be higher if you were able to pass over them, but you're seeing less space at a given time, so it would take more passes for you to end up with the camera focus on the subject. So keep that in mind as you're moving through making the decision on what lens you want to use. However, I'm a big believer that lens type is not something to necessarily be hooked on. There's always the option to fly closer, and some people don't like to hear that, but in most cases, if you don't have high trees or a lot of things impeding you from flying closer, flying closer with a 9mm lens will give you more detail, and you'll just lose the amount of space you're covering at a given time. So have confidence in the imagery that you're getting, no matter what lens you choose. I think that you'll be just fine. Okay. So there's a variety of industrial applications for drones in general, but aerial thermal imaging is especially used for the following. So border patrol, pretty clear, just identifying human beings. Building inspection, and this will be for roofs and also for some infrastructure. They are being used in construction while buildings are being made, but also for locating energy that could be escaping from the outside of a building. Can be used for, this will click, firefighting. That's pretty clear, but these also leak into search and rescue, which is its own category. For law enforcement, also for power line inspections, probably the number 2 use for aerial thermal imaging. Search and rescue, probably the number 1 and most compelling use for aerial thermal imaging. For solar panel array inspections, and for surveillance. So these are the primary verticals that we're selling these cameras into. But like many drone products, we're really seeing the use cases expand frequently. So if you're doing something new that falls outside of these applications, if you'd like to share, I'd love to understand more about how our cameras are being used out in the field. So shoot me an email. I'll be quite sensitive with anything that you send over if you don't want it shared. But if we can understand the applications that you're using them, we can make better products that will suit you. For pricing, we hadn't really publicly released pricing. I know that it's out there and that was completely fine, but hopefully this is pretty crystal clear of what the pricing is going forward. So for a 336 resolution Duo Pro R, no matter what lens size you choose, the retail price is $5,199. From FLIR, all of our prices are set in USD. So if you're purchasing somewhere in Europe, Latin America, Asia, the pricing on our side would still be in USD, but maybe through your value-added reseller, they would change that to the local currency, but just you can do that conversion on your own. And then for the 640 resolution cameras, for the 13 and 19 millimeter, it's the same at $7,599. And then the 25 millimeter camera is $7,999. Pre-orders are being taken now. So in this first batch of units that will be shipping in early November, I really highly suggest that you put your name on a unit right away, either through your local retailer or you can ask me and I can help you out with that, just so that you can be a part of this first delivery of units.